some reasons why some parents have lots of control dynamics. So that's between a parent and a child relationships. And I'm going to give you some examples, and I'm going to relate that both to a son and both to a daughter. So first of all, I'm going to get into the psychological reasons, and then I'm going to give you my insight on spiritual perspectives also. Say, for example, a mother can give control over her daughter. She might be doing that by monitoring her activities. She might be telling her what to do, what choices to make. And a mother can also impose a lot of expectations on a daughter, okay? And this usually can come from the own mother's insecurities, and that she might be thinking that it's for her own safety, for her own success, or maybe just to be accepted by society. An example can be when a mother might insist that her daughter needs to follow that particular career because she fears, that any other choices that the daughter might take, that's going to lead her to failure or disappointment. And if I'm going to relate that to a father and son dynamic, father may have a controlling behavior over their son, of course, due to his own unresolved past issues, and perhaps the father might have feelings of inadequacy, or he might have been in a dynamic of his past that he was actually being controlled by others, and that's why he continues to follow that dynamic. And as that result, he actually is projecting his own unaddressed issues onto his son with an attempt in order to dictate the decisions that the son has to make, and prevents him from being able to act autonomous to explore his own interests or even aspirations. Both a mother and a father can display a lot of overprotective control over their children, and it doesn't matter whether they're males or females, and that it doesn't matter whether a person is a child or an adult. The dynamics still continue. A parent may excessively restrict their social interactions and activities due to the parent's fears of the potential dangers or the negative influences, and they can limit the independence of these children or adults because they believe that they need constant guidance and protection in order to prevent them from making mistakes. Enmeshment can also occur between a mother and son or a mother and a daughter relationship. So in this dynamic, the parent and the child or even adult might not have boundaries set, and they might struggle to maintain separate identities. That's why it's important that they can relate to one another, but they're both separate identities. You can't be putting your son or your daughter like a friend, because that does not work in a family dynamic, because control and power dynamics come to play. The parent that gives that control, it makes them, when they start to get over friendly and they start to get in people's life, it has a really major effect on the person's choices. It has an effect on their emotions and their relationships, and they're actually denying their children to have the opportunity to develop, for them to be autonomous and to have a sense of their own self, because they're constantly controlled about what their mothers say or what their fathers say or do. If I'm going to relate that to the spiritual realm, I have to say many dynamics now on this lifetime that we're living, there's lots of karmic connections that have a lot of unresolved issues that mothers, fathers, and sons and daughters, they need to address certain things, because sometimes family members come as karmic members. If we see a mother dynamic that is controlling towards her son, perhaps due to a past life conflict that they had, or they had a power imbalance between them, they're gonna come into this lifetime, and it's given an opportunity again, so both of them can learn about the lessons of balance and to be forgiving and to be empowering and to overcome these dynamics. There's also soul contracts within these dynamics for opportunities of growth. A son and a daughter can sharingly engage in a soul contract in which their parents are there to facilitate their personal growth and their spiritual evolution. So they're like teachers, so they can get their sons and daughters to go up the evolutionary ladder. A daughter might have chosen to be born into the family where her mother actually exhibited controlling behavior over her, and the mother is there to learn lessons. That daughter might need to be setting boundaries, she needs to assert herself, and she has to see her own self-worth and not rely constantly of the validation of the mother or what the mother always says. The mother or the father, it doesn't play a difference. If I would relate it, like say for both genders again, either the son or the daughter, they might have agreed to come into a soul contract that places the son and daughter in a lot of challenges, which they might struggle with their parents, because their parents are trying to teach them in order for them to develop their own sense of identity and assertiveness, and to realize the parental control that they have. And a lot of people out there usually put their parents on a pedestal, and they seem to think that parents are perfect and they do everything right. A lot of people that are now on this earth were put on this place in order for them to be able to heal ancestral patterns, which are really real. There's a control dynamic within the parent and the child relationship, and it's influenced by a lot of unresolved ancestral patterns. And if the children or the adults do not manage to resolve this, what happens is you transfer all of those debts onto your children. So anything that you are neglecting to be doing to fix situations, you are passing them down to generations. Say a daughter might experience her mother being controlling her behavior as a reflection of that intergenerational pattern of control and disempowerment. The part of the journey of the daughter means that she has to now come and she needs to find the ways to break free from these patterns and to actually heal all these wounds that are associated with control. Otherwise, they're going to be reflecting back in the life of the individual. And it's not only through the family dynamics, it can also be through outside sources. So there are lessons, because we as human beings are right now on earth and we're all experiencing a spiritual journey, and there is always a parent and a child dynamic. And then sometimes, when not sometimes, but most of the times, when there is a little bit of a dysfunction when it comes to parents and children and adults, it's there for a very important reason, so that people understand the important lessons. So most of the people go on about not healing these dynamics. There might be a son that needs to try to navigate within himself to overcome his mother's controlling behavior, and he needs to know how to rely on himself and to trust himself and to know what it is that he's doing, and not to be listening to what the mother or the father is saying. Sometimes we had dynamics where there's married couples and we get to see that there's always fights breaking loose between the son, or the dynamics of their children getting married to people and they're fighting between them, and then the son does not take responsibility for his wife and the mother butts in the way, and there's lots of control issues, and it can lead to breakups and the lesson not being learned. There are many different examples what can happen. A mother, for example, might want to keep somebody entrapped in a situation where the person might see that it's not for their highest good, but the mother can use personal powers, and she might not have boundaries, and it might also be in the father, by the way. I'm not just talking about the mother. It all has to come with the parent dynamics. It's based on their insecurities, it's based on their own unresolved past issues, it's based on their overprotectiveness and the way that they're enmeshing into everything. And the children or the adults need to find the way to break this. Sometimes it's really challenging because the dynamic may not be that healthy, but you need to be able to break this kind of dynamics that are happening in order to become a separate identity, because you're on this earth not to copy your family or your caretaker. Okay, one of the biggest lessons in life when it comes to dynamics of mother, dad, and children is, and I'm gonna hurt you for saying this, but unfortunately it's to learn how most of the population out there of families have karmic families. So they were put on this earth in order for them to be able to understand that their parents actually are not meant to be put on a pedestal, because the mask of illusion needs to be taken off the face of a person. So we have to get to see the actual people for who they are and the behaviors that they're encompassing. We might not be seeing all of those dynamics because there are lots of karmic ties between our blood families, and there's soul contracts involved, and there's all that ancestral pattern that's been happening. Many people are not seeing that. Got so used to the dynamic of their family that they think that that actually is normal. So if they haven't seen what is healthy, it actually can be quite challenging to break free from intergenerational patterns. And lots of people are not going to heal, and unfortunately they're passing that on to their children. I'm going to give you some tactics that they can use, all right? And it's not all of it, but I'll give you some ideas. So for example, a mother or a father can use guilt tripping for their children as a means to influence their child's behavior or the way they're going to make decisions. They're making them feel obligated, and they do that through emotional manipulation for the mother or the father, that they can create a sense of indebtedness or to create shame in the child. and usually the child continues with that dynamic, and they can't see how their families are guilt tripping them and are keeping them stagnant. And there's a psychological term that we call gaslighting, and it involves when the parents are actually involved in distorting, so not showing exactly what it's meant to show, or they're denying their children's perception of reality. So they're making them kind of trip in a way. So they're making them question their own thoughts, their own feelings or experiences. And because the mother and the father is supposed to be someone that, let's say, we trust most of the times, except if it's like really, really toxic, they manage to get into their children's aura and pass that distortion into the adult or the child. And this tactic undermines the child's self-confidence, and that can lead them to doubt their own judgment. So the mother or the father usually can give a conditional type of love. So it is not unconditional. The mother may withhold love, and she might withhold affection or approval unless that child is going to conform to what she expects from the children or what she demands from the children. That tactic is used to put a fear of rejection and to make the children depend on the mother or the father in order to get their validation. There's a lot of emotional manipulation that is happening. They utilize a lot of emotional manipulation in order to control their children's behavior. They can go on to exploit the child's vulnerabilities. They trigger guilt within them, or they instill fear, or they're using a lot of emotional outbursts in order for them to have powers. Mothers and fathers, they can employ in these control tactics in order to create the dynamics where the child will remain dependent on them, and that will make them feel obligated to fulfill their wishes. And it's quite selfish and egotistical, and most people do not see these dynamics. Family might be fearing losing control, they might be feeling irrelevant, or they might not even be facing their own unresolved traumas or insecurities. And as a result, a daughter or a son may have a difficult time cutting ties or releasing generational trauma because it challenges their sense of control, and it requires them to confront their own wounds, which many are not ready to face. These dynamics that are playing are quite complex, and every relationship is different, but it's so important that you start to recognize and to see in what ways can you overcome challenges that your parental figures are giving onto you, and in which ways can you establish a healthy boundary. A lot of people feel shamed, and they feel because their mother or their father brought them into this life and they did certain things for them that they're obligated to something, and they do not put boundaries on these people. And it does not matter if they are parts of your blood, or if they're their mother, if they're their father. What you need to understand is part of your soul lesson of growth for this humanity is that you need to be able to see your parents for who they are. And we're not saying that some are toxic parents out there that have been through toxicity, but there's some that are unaware. So either they're toxic or either they're not. There needs to be a way that you stop this cycle, because if the cycle is not stopped, you're going to be continuing to encounter these dynamics within your current lifetime, and unfortunately you're going to be passing on this to your children, to your genes, and it goes over and over again. So you see, you might have some traits that unconsciously they might not be your own, so they were probably passed down to you from the generations. So now is the time to be able to break free of all of these dynamics. And do not neglect the metaphysical aspects when it comes to the branch of philosophy, because that can explore a lot of fundamental questions about the nature of our reality and about our existence and the relationship that we have between our minds and our physical world. There are indeed karmic mothers and karmic fathers out there, and they are interferences. Karma was a concept that was found in a lot of traditions of the spiritual and philosophical traditions, that it might have included Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. So it has a law of cause and effect. So indeed, our actions do have consequences that are going to affect our present and our future experiences. There is karma. There is, and do not neglect or think it's crazy that there's no idea of rebirth and reincarnation, because because even if you can't see it with a naked eye, unfortunately, most of us were here multiple times before. And there's a lot of individuals out there that have accumulated a lot of karma over multiple lifetimes. So do not neglect these things, even though that you cannot see them and you might be thinking it's a bunch of gibberish. Even if you don't want to hear the word karma or metaphysics or spirituality, you need to know about generational trauma, and that existed in our ancestors, regardless of what you want to say, regardless of how you want to interpret it. In our past, the families of our past also had lessons. We have our history to relate to that. All of the mistakes that we used to do in the past, it's a repeat thing that is constantly coming back. And we're supposed to be learning by this, right? We're supposed to be learning from the guidance of history, and we need to get support from all of the history that's been happening. And look at all of these challenges that happened as part of our history, and that contributes to all of our growth and all of our transformation, and to all of the individuals that our ancestors used to be connected to and the people that we're connected to now. Nobody that you meet in this lifetime is by chance. Nothing is by chance. There's lots of things to learn out there. Be open to the possibility that you are here from a divine source and you come from a higher consciousness. So there is a deep soul level, and you share a unique blood between your family or your caretakers, and your family dynamics can be intense, but they can also be transformative. And they are there to catalyze personal growth and a lot of spiritual awakening. I would get you to see it as a mutual journey of discovering yourself and to evolve as a person. If you're one of these people that don't have very good relationships with your families, please note that it has a lot to do with the unresolved karmic lessons or the past life connections you shared with these people, or what stuff that you've been through in the past. And they're gonna be so apparent in your faces, whether with your family, whether with your friends, whether with your co-workers and all of that. Because your life, if you look back at it, it's always repetitive patterns, repetitive challenges, repetitive lessons. And why are these lessons coming to you? They're constantly coming to you to bombard you, because you need to learn something and you need to resolve something, and you are unaware of it because you're ignoring. You're just living in the physical reality that you are in now, and that's not the way that it works. There is a very strong emotional dynamic out there, and it is serving a purpose in order to facilitate your personal growth. And you need to balance these energies between you and the other external parties.